Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Concordia University's Nostagain fourth space. Thanks for joining us for today's event, the fourth part, panel number 4 of Sensing Nostalgia Differently with Research and Creation. This is all part of Frames of Reference. Panel 4 is Nostalgia Toys with Time. And so those of you joining us, we are live streaming to YouTube and via Zoom. So if you're joining us there, just popping in, to let you know, you can put comments, questions, any trouble you're having, put that into the chat, and we'll do our best to help you out and read out questions a little bit later. Those of you here in the space will run around with the mic. Okay, it's very much, I don't know if this is the last time, but I'm going to throw the microphone to our co-conspirator for today and also a Concordia Public Scholar in Social and Cultural Analysis, Richy Srirachanikorn. The mic is yours.
Thank you, Doug. Guilty as charged. Folks, if folks can sort of gather around, maybe grab another slice of pizza. Vegetarian's very popular, by the way. Or coffee and tea as we get started for our fourth and final panel of the day before our large performance. As well, welcome back to Concordia University's fourth space. Here we have the Frames of Reference Nostalgia Symposium. We've been doing this now for 4 years in the making. Started at the Milieux Institute. Now we're here at fourth space where we ask basically one question. Can we use nostalgia for the future? Nostalgia is a past-based emotion, right? Something quite deeply personal. Something that stays with us in our everyday lives, as we talked about earlier. Close objects, clothes, scents, smells, tastes, routines. Yet for some reason, it is entirely marketized, politicized, abstracted into something we can't singularly touch, feel, or even agree on. When I was younger, I was born in Thailand, I had sort of a headless bunny, let's put it that way. Don't ask me how, but it became headless. And what attracted me to this sort of comfort nostalgia was not so much the form of the bunny itself, which I found at Dollarama, the exact same one. How uncanny is that? But it was the cotton inside, right? Because it was headless, the cotton came out. And I sort of tucked it with me when I was a young kid. I just sort of felt the cotton and slept with it. What I was yearning for, per se, wasn't a toy or a figure of a teddy bear. It was the feeling of company, right? A friend, perhaps being able to feel tucked in when the blanket wasn't enough. All of us here today have objects near and dear to us. Some we collect, some we are given and passed down, that toys with the idea of why it is a nostalgic thing. Think back right now just briefly to something you hold dear. Is it fond, nostalgic to you because of what it is represented? An old thing, a vintage thing, a retro? Or is it more because it was sold and told to you as something, as an heirloom, Nintendo's game, something to look back to, worth looking back to? A rotary phone, something that you should look at as a sort of technological grandfather? Or is your nostalgia also personal? Exploring that now and diving into sort of the cotton, I suppose, will be the fourth panel moderated by Zo Kopyna, who is one of our newest members, as well as Ruth Weber-Jugo and Dr. Kate Cleo-Alexander of the Nostagain Network. I pass over to Zo.
Introduction. Thank you, Richy. Good afternoon. Hello to everyone who is joining us in person and online. Our final panel today, which is this one, is Nostalgia Toys with Time. My name is Zo Kopyna. I am your moderator and one of the panelists on this panel. I would also like to introduce the other two joining us here today in person. Firstly, Thomas Tam, who is a master's student in game studies from Brock University, and Dr. Myles Ethan Lascity, who is an assistant professor of journalism and director of fashion media program at Southern Methodist University. Each panelist will have 15 minutes to present their work. My colleague Annie, who is there in the corner, will give you a time notice with the appropriate amount of time that you have left. In the last 15 minutes of this panel, you can ask questions. So any questions that you can come up with, hold it until that section. For those of you joining online, write the comments in the chat and just be sure you're directing it to the right person. Without further ado, I welcome Thomas to the floor.
Ooh, this is exciting. My first academic presentation. Ooh, thank you. All right, hello everyone. My name is Thomas. I'm a master's student at Brock University doing game studies, and today I'm here to talk about my major research project, Poptropica. Let's start off with some background. It's the early 2000s. Everyone is using Windows XP, phones still have buttons on them. James Paul Gee wrote a book about how video games can be used for learning, but most importantly, I was born in 2002, and that's my baby picture. My video game journey started in grade 1 at my first elementary school. At the time, Hong Kong was pushing for more digital learning, so I got a chance to play a wide range of educational children games at school like Small Campus, Fun Brain, British Council, Star Wars Fair, and of course, Poptropica. As the 2010 rolls along, I moved on to more mainstream games like Minecraft, Overwatch, and PUBG as I got older and into middle school. But every now and then, I find myself coming back to Poptropica for different reasons, and it's always a unique experience every time I come back to this little mid-2000 Flash game. We are traveling in opposite direction. Every time we meet, I know him more, he knows me less. A quote from Doctor Who that really encapsulates my relationship with Poptropica. Like any live service game, Poptropica saw many changes and updates over the year, including UI, engine, and aesthetics. Some change I love, some change I hate, and some change are questionable, much like most of my life choice, honestly. As the year go by, I got older and wiser, while Poptropica got younger and shinier in parallel to attract a new era of kids. I found the idea of growing up in parallel with not just game in general, but a specific game fascinating, and that's the foundation of my research. A part history, part self-reflection, and part game analysis of Poptropica and my experience growing up with it in parallel. So, what the heck is Poptropica? Poptropica is a web-based browser game created by Jeff Keeney in 2007 and published by Pearson Education. Besides being the creator of Poptropica, Jeff is also known as the author of the Diary of the Wimpy Kids book series, which is one of my favorite book series growing up. In Poptropica, the player travels to different islands to complete a narrative-based quest to receive a medallion and some credit that the player then can use to buy cosmetic items like clothing for their character or chewing gum that the player can chew on. When the game first came out in 2007, there was only one island, but for the next 10 years, they kept adding more islands to explore, more character to meet, and more memories to get nostalgic about. I first played Poptropica in my elementary school computer lab around 2008. I was in grade 1, and Poptropica was one of the games that my teacher recommended us to play as part of a push for the digital education in Hong Kong. Back then, there was only 6 islands that was playable, and I couldn't complete any of them because my English is terrible, I could not understand a word. But I wasn't the only Hong Kongers who fell in love with Poptropica. In the same year, Poptropica Help Blog, a fan blog for Poptropica, was founded by 11-year-old blogger Slantersfish from Hong Kong. Today, the Poptropica Help Blog still exists and is updated regularly with guest posts, new fan projects, and artworks. The Poptropica Help Blog also has been a treasure trove of information for my research, and I'll be contributing to this blog with my guest posts on this presentation today. While Slantersfish and Poptropica Help Blog grew bigger and bigger every year, my interest in Poptropica got smaller and smaller, and it was hard to be interested in a game when you can't understand the game and can't progress through the game. In my absence, Poptropica added many islands, feature, and change, like Poptropica Store in 2009, membership in 2010, and mini quest in 2011. In July of 2011, I came back to Poptropica after 3 years and make a new account since I couldn't remember my original login. On that day, my avatar, Franny Bite, was born, and today I still use that account to play Poptropica. This time around, I'm in grade 4. My English got better, and Poptropica has gone from 5 to 20 islands to explore. Also new this time is competition in the form of my younger sister, Charlie. Just like any sibling relationship, we fight a lot growing up, and we love turning just anything into competitions. And Poptropica is the same. So naturally, we compete to see who can complete the most island. It had been 15 years, but I still remember the day my sister told me she beat early Poptropica Island and got the first island medallion between us. That grudge kicked off a 3 years competition to see who is better and who can complete more island. Because of that competition, I started taking learning English seriously so I could complete more island and be better than her. Over the next 2 years, she completes some islands, I complete other, we fought each other on the same islands. Eventually, we complete all the islands that was available at the time, and we start looking for what's next. Poptropica's game, coming out June 14, 2012. Poptropica's game was my sister's favorite island growing up, and one of my least favorite islands. The quest is simple: win 9 Olympic-style minigame to win the medallion. For her, she loved that the entire island is just a series of minigames that focus on clicking at the right time. For me, I hate it with a passion because she is good at it, and also because there isn't a story for me to hook onto and get interest about. For me, my favorite island is Mystery Train Island, a semi-historical island where I play as a detective who have to figure out who stole Thomas Edison's newest invention and eventually uncover a plot to steal Tesla Transformers. Back to Poptropica's game island. The island was also a very unique island for Poptropica, as it was the first time-limited island before Fortnite and the Black Hole. 6 months after the island came out, Poptropica's game sank back into the ocean on January 24, 2013, and the island became inaccessible for everyone. My sister was devastated by it, as it had become an island she played over and over again and even gave up on catching up on our little sibling competition over this. However, Poptropica's game island won't be gone for long. In June 2013, Poptropica rolled out the beta-carotene islands for members only. As the name suggests, the island was a beta test for the new engine and UI upgrades. Now here's some technical jargon, bear with me. Poptropica is made with Flash ActionScript 2 technology, which has a ton of limitation. With beta-carotene, the island was rebuilt using ActionScript 3, and featuring a wider 16:9 display, a new loading screen, and higher quality graphics. As you can see, in the left, this is the old ActionScript 2, and in the right, there's the new ActionScript 3. As you can see, you can see more in the screen, and the UI got cleaner. Beta-carotene was a success, and it became the format for all the new islands coming up since. With Virus Hunter Island in August 2013, and that's where I got the helmet as part of the launch event for the island. After Virus Hunter Island is the return of Poptropica's game. Like the beta-carotene, this time Poptropica's game came back with the new formats and 2 new spots. My sister was very excited about it when it first came out, but the excitement soon faded after she started running into technical problems over and over again. As it turned out, our computer was kind of potato and it can't run the newer island very often and often stopped working and the browser just crashed. Because of that and her disinterest in other islands in Poptropica, she eventually stopped playing Poptropica, leaving me the victor by default. 2013 was a big year for both myself and Poptropica. Poptropica saw the rollout of its new AS3 formats and I started middle school in Hong Kong. At a different school with different friend group and a different environment. With all the new excitement in life, I too stopped getting interested about Poptropica, and adding to that, I also got introduced to Minecraft in 2014 and subsequently got addicted to it for the next 3 years. So I left Poptropica scene for a while. But I won't be gone for long. I came back to Poptropica once again in 2017, another landmark year for both me and Poptropica. For Poptropica, they just announced Poptropica Worlds, or as they call it, New Poptropica. This new game will be coded in the Unity engine and feature 4 new islands, a new dialogue system, a new character model. For me, I just moved to Canada and started high school. With Poptropica World released and the new Canadian world I just find myself in, I got back to Poptropica out of curiosity and to reminisce of the good old days. It had been 4 years since I played Poptropica, and I have 2 laptop upgrades since then. It was a blast playing through all the island I wasn't able to fully enjoy back then, along with the new island that got introduced since I left in 2013. It was a blast, I have a great time with it. It is also the last time I got excited about a new island release with Greek Sea Odyssey in 2018. Unfortunately, Poptropica World was a bit of a disaster. While I liked the new version, it lacked a lot of what I felt in love with Poptropica all those years ago. And that sentiment kind of echoed with the community as well. The story is very thin, the movement is janky, and the biggest problem I have with the game talking down to me. The failure of Poptropica World was the beginning of the end for Poptropica. In July 2017, Adobe announced the end of life for Flash by 2020. And so, Poptropica development went from creating new islands to preserving Poptropica. In April 2019, the axe came down when Poptropica removed over half of the island from the live game, including all the older island and even some of the newer island. At the time, they promised to bring back all the old islands when they port the game to the new Hex engine, a promise that they never really kept to. Around that time, community preservation of Poptropica begins, starting off with a coder IDK who make the Poptropica teleporter that use a special link to access Poptropica server directly. It is also around that time someone scraped the entire Poptropica server and download all the assets for Poptropica. Later on, those assets were used to create the Flashpoint creation and Poptropica Legacy, 2 independent preservation projects for Poptropica. While the Flashpoint team aimed to preserve Poptropica as it was, the Legacy team wanted to improve on Poptropica and deliver on the promise that the developer couldn't. In 2020, as you all know, COVID happened. I was in my final year of high school and got into a bit of a spiral over losing graduation, the last term, the last day of school, and most importantly, I don't know what I'm going to do next. So I fired up Poptropica. By then, it had been 3 years since I played through the newer island and even longer since I played the older island. So I sat down and spent the next few months playing Poptropica during the lockdown and even write some fun little side story about the adventure I have in Poptropica over the years. As most of the older island was disabled by Poptropica, I have to use one of the preservation projects, the Poptropica teleporter, to access most of the older island. Eventually, I got accepted to university and soon switched to arts after a miserable year in engineering, and it was pretty much the same for Poptropica. Poptropica went through a little bit of a rough patch and identity crisis in 2021. With both of the old islands gone, Poptropica needed to reinvent itself. Throughout the year, they re-released one new island, reintroduced a few older islands, and a much-hated re-release of one of the fan-favorite islands. At the same year, they also released a match-free minigame and a new store page that have very mixed opinion from the community. When I got out of my spiral in 2022, Poptropica didn't quite make it out. 2022 was the last year Poptropica saw a new island release with Jade Square Island in April. From then until mid-2023, Poptropica released a paid version of Poptropica on Steam with few of the old islands, but nothing new has been announced since then. In the same year, Poptropica World was quietly shut down and the old developer team got laid off in droves, including a few of the old long-term developers and community manager. The writing was on the wall. The end is near for Poptropica. In January 2024, Poptropica deleted its official blog and removed membership entirely from the game. Every news article, every post, every piece of media that the official Poptropica creator posted was gone after 17 years. In the same month, Poptropica announced they will be shutting down the website and migrating the game to Kumef Game, another educational minigame site that started off in the 2000s. And that's where Poptropica have been ever since, with no new development, no more news, and the parent company seemingly not care about the game or the IP anymore. Today, Poptropica can be still played on Kumef Game officially or Flashpoint unofficially. As for me, I started my master at Brock and decided to write my master paper on Poptropica and how I grew up with it because of my memory of growing up with it, my nostalgic feeling for it, and I wanting to share to other people what I like and to encourage them to find their Poptropica, a game that they grew up with, that they really love. I also founded Influx Game with some friends, and we are an indie game studio, and we are currently making a 2D side-scroller platformer game, kind of like Poptropica. In the end, I want to thank my supervisor, Dr. David Hutchinson, for helping me on this journey. I also want to thank the Nostagain Network for hosting this symposium, my sister Charlie for playing Poptropica with me all these years, and Poptropica Health Blog for preserving much of the Poptropica history and culture since 2008. Thank you.
Hello. I truthfully have been very excited about your presentation since you submitted. I am also a very avid Poptropica player, and I played it a lot while I was a kid. Oh, wasn't expecting that. So I was very excited about this presentation, and I'm glad that you touched on it, and I got to relive some of those memories I completely forgot about. There is truly no way to introduce oneself, but I'm next, it's me. I am presenting on a design toy that you'll be seeing quite soon. So if we could bring the PowerPoint up. So my name is Zo Kopyna. I am a member of the Nostagain Institute. I am a design and art history student here at Concordia. So how do you do a presentation about a toy without showing your toy? Otherwise, you guys are just gonna see pictures. I want you to all reach under your chairs. Underneath every single chair in this room is a worm on a string. If you are not sitting at a chair, there is a bowl that Annie is running around with. And during the course of this presentation, and only during this presentation, let's be respectful to Dr. Lascity, I would like you to play with this toy as I guide you through its design principles. You can play with it how you wish, and I'll give you guys just a moment to open it. The plastic is kind of annoying, and I would encourage you to put it in the recycling after, because, you know, the environment is important. Now that the worm is in your hand, I would like us to do a little formal analysis of this worm. You can see that it is a fuzzy-like texture. It moves around, it is not static. The string that is attached to it is a fishing line, which helps give the illusion as if it's moving on its own. We know that's not actually happening, you're the one doing it, but let's, for a moment, imagine that it is moving on its own. As you're looking at it, everyone got different colors. They truly were random. It was like what I picked out of the bag and put under your chair. You sat at a chair, and now you have a worm. It has little googly eyes, which you can inspect on your actual worm. And you can tell that it kind of tapers off and can form fun little shapes. So this, what I am presenting to you, is a worm on a string, but it was not always called that. This toy was patented in 1974 by the Ilfelder Toy Company and was known as Squirmels. Since then, it's completely lost, I don't want to say like patent power, but there are tons of knockoffs. And this is exactly what you have in your hand. It's a knockoff. Please don't sue me. One of the things that I find really interesting about design culture is the ability to create knockoffs. It is something that with mass production inherently happens, and I would like us to focus on that. So the worm on a string, when we think about its inception under the patent name Squirmels, which I have the modern interpretation over here. It's now under a different company. It's Nostalgic Toys, headed by Carl Zieler. And it has significantly better packaging than the one you had in your hands. It is also a little bit more expensive. Since the patent was then sold, it's gained a new life. But when we think of the original Squirmel, it was created in 1974, which, as we know, was a very turbulent time for the United States, not unlike now. In 1974, the Vietnam War was still going on. There was a massive financial recession, and this toy stood as a design principle of non-representational open-ended play. As a result of the wars and the political assassinations that happened in the 60s, there was an increased movement for nonviolent toys. The specific group that was active in the 60s and continued in the 70s was called No War Toys. And the concept was, as toys are weapons, we have to find ways of communicating nonviolence to children. And the result of that, the easy way, is that children play with toys. And what they do in their forms of play then can translate to how they live their lives as an adult and the way that they participate in society. And so not having weapons-based toys was a way to impact the future. And so you can see, pretty obviously, he is not a gun. He is not a weapon. I would like to say that this is an incredibly powerful toy in the design world, and specifically for non-representational play. However, I can't do that without mentioning the pet rock, which I'm assuming we have all heard of. If not, it's pretty self-explanatory in the name. The pet rock, the pet rock was distributed as a children's toy in the 1970s. The concept was simple. It was a rock in a box. The creator, Gary Dahl, in an interview in 1975 with the CBC, specifically talks about why he believes this toy was incredibly popular. And the reasoning is that it allowed you to put the emotions that you felt onto this object. There was no prescribed identity, there was no name, it was a rock in a box, and it was framed as a pet. And what he saw is that people took care of it. People wanted to interact with this toy. It became a massive craze that still continues to this day in a way. And it was particularly interesting because in 1975, which is a really bad year for the socio-political climate of New York City had the highest percentage of pet rocks bought in the country. And so this was something that he noted in the CBC interview in 1975, that this was incredibly important to the processing of what was going on, to have this rock, to feel care for it, to prescribe it its personality. And it was able to transform culture in a way. Again, we all have heard of pet rock, even though most of you, I'm assuming, have not had one, especially not as a branded entity. If anything, you had the knockoff, which is just a rock. I would like to introduce to you, if you have not already heard, of Jean Baudrillard's Stages of Simulacra, which is one of my favorite personal favorites of a philosophical theory. I've created this graphic to briefly explain, in the context of Worm on a String, what the stages are. So notably, stage 1, it's an earthworm. It is reality. Stage 2 masks a basic reality. It's an interpretation of that. It is not an earthworm, but it is earthworm adjacent. At stage 3, with the worm on a string, there's the absence of basic reality, and it calls into question what reality is and if it even exists. That is what is in your hand right now. Stage 4 is the stage that there is still room for interpretation. It has no relation to any reality whatsoever, and it is purely based by the previous iterations. So objects like the worm on a string exist in the 3rd stage, and it is removed from the concept of an earthworm 3 times. Another philosopher I'm a big fan of, Theodor Adorno, specifically his theory of mass culture, and that products can't be truly referential, and rather static tricks simulate this novelty and perseverance. So he theorizes that objects cannot, they have to pay tribute to time, or else they exist in this ephemeral state. So the public interprets objects based on what they are feeling. There is a concept of construction that you have to make with the worm on a string as you see it right now, because it is not designed to be referential. So it is in a cause and present. It doesn't reference the past. It exists in the present, but does it? And it has no aspects of futurity. This worm on a string that you are holding is a type of kitsch. And kitsch, as historian Thomas Kulka posits, is overly emotional and similarly interpretive by the society that not only creates it, but consumes it. And so we're gonna go back to Baudrillard. It is an absence of basic reality. And to get to stage 4, there is still room for interpretation. And we are able to then look at the worm and think, what can this be? And so what I did was I wanted this to be an incense holder. I thought the shape was fun. I decided to make a whole series about it. And now it is completely absent from the concept of worm. You can tell that it moves in a way similar to what a worm moves like, but it's ceramic. It doesn't really do that. It's also an incense holder. Last time I checked, worms cannot do that. When we look at the packaging and the marketing behind worm on a strings in their official and knockoffs versions, they're specifically marketed to you as a pet. So you can feed it, you can care for it, you can take it on walks, people have given them names, and this is actively encouraged. What this encouragement does is blurring the line and allows you to get to stage 4, which is pure simulacrum. I got my first worm that I remember in 2020, a year that we all remember because of the COVID-19 pandemic. I was given a worm by my friend, Dr. Ali McCallion, and this kickstarted this obsession. Something that was also happening at that time was a huge cultural uptake in the presence of worm on a string and how it translated into internet cultures. And so we have these interpretations of these toys put on masks that are also referencing, crime. It's countercultural. And they're being put on a mask because that is the artifact of the time. Something that has also happened concurrently during the COVID-19 pandemic was the countercultural essence made them a queer icon. And so this is an example of many that I ran into of worm on a string falling into camp aesthetics, falling into counterculture, and therefore being able to be reinterpreted as a queer icon. And so I would like to argue that the worm on a string is a product of crisis, both in its original interpretation and in the way that it existed in the COVID-19 pandemic. And the reason why this happened was because it was a fun, non-iterative toy that people were able to put their emotions onto. There was a marked absence of any proper narrative, and people were allowed to go with whatever their heart desired. And so he was a gay icon. He was doing crime. And with that, your worm can now do anything that you want it to. It exists in the 3rd stage of simulacrum, and that is a benefit to every single one of you. Because as we think about the themes of frames of reference, I presented these 2 frames of reference that were present globally with this toy. But that doesn't mean that it is universal to every single one here. You get to personally put your own frame of reference in how you interpret this toy and how you interpret this event and carry it forward. I would also like to thank Chris Moore, who is sitting here today. This was a project for his design class that went way too far. I would also like to thank Dr. Ali McCallion, who gave me the worm, and Emma Toole, who was a significant inspiration and gave me quite a lot of resources. Essentially, I saw a video of hers that was posted in 2020 during my research, and she helped me out and was very lovely presence in compiling this presentation. So thank you to the three of you. This has been a very interesting presentation to go under. And you absolutely will be hearing more from me about Worm on a String because I fear this chapter is not yet closed. So that wraps up my presentation, and we have one more presentation. I would like to introduce or reintroduce Dr. Myles Ethan Lascity. And do you want to do the podium or Mike?
Thank you. All right, are we good? That's a really hard presentation to follow. I do not have toys for you all, and I'm sorry. Again, thank you for that introduction. Are we ready to go? Sure. Yeah, my name is Myles Ethan Lascity. I'm an associate professor of journalism and director of fashion media at Southern Methodist University. I thank you all for having me here. I consider myself to be a new nostalgia scholar, so I have learned so much today. And I'm really looking forward to sharing some of this with you. I do not follow copyright law, which has been a problem, and I am making the tech team work overtime trying to hopefully show you or at least play some sounds for you. So we will see if we get there. Almost. Cool. It's loading just about. It'll so be worth it, I promise. This is what happens when you use too big of images, and videos in file. We can just go with the PowerPoint if that's easier. Imagery. Thank you. Again, sorry to be a pain. My presentation today sounds exactly what my early childhood felt, considering aquatic ambience and social media nostalgia. Guess I should use the clicker so we can move on. So the way that I'm coming at this is actually from media affect. And affect, as we might know, is an extra-linguistic discourse within media, sometimes called an intensity or a feeling. Although there is not one overall way of theorizing affect, there are a couple different ones intertwining here. It is somewhat in line, or at least I'm using it, somewhat in line with Raymond Williams' structure of feeling as a capitalist mode of communication. Affect has been deemed as central to understanding of our information and image-based late capitalist culture. It's also been described as what's sticky about media products, right? And what sustains or preserves the connection between ideas, values, and objects. At the same time, affect is hard to interrogate because it's not really there, right? There's no direct evidence in the way that linguistic or image research allows us to have. And so it makes it a little bit tricky. All right, with that, I'm particularly looking at affect within social media. Generally, social media researchers have prioritized consumption habits, user practices, and labor issues rather than analyze actual content within media. However, there has been a rise of nostalgic content that has been documented by popular press journalists. and particularly work on TikTok, which I've learned is now very problematic here to present on, or streaming has been limited overall. However, TikTok has been understood as a mimetic platform where basically we're just reproducing others' content in different ways. The platform has been understood to merge different voices and bodies, creating some sort of a ventriloquism. Or finally, TikTok has been theorized as television and having a particular flow in the way that we watch it. So if we've ever got stuck at just scrolling to the next video, you know what we're talking about here. All right, coming back for nostalgia, I trust you all know this, so I'm gonna move pretty quickly, and you are all probably better at this than I am. But nostalgia has been both a feeling and mediated phenomenon. Right? Nostalgia might be understood as what is yearning for what is not attainable, right? Or unhappiness with the present. And one other thing that has been picked on multiple times throughout the day is that nostalgia is not an accurate reflection of the past, and it has also been called historic amnesia by Stephanie Coontz. All right, so music on TikTok, and I promise we're getting past all of my words on screen. So we know that TikTok is not an accurate representation of reality. TikTok does encourage the use of audio templates, lip syncing, and makes improv and collaboration possible. Specifically with regard to music on TikTok, researchers have said that they can amplify pre-existing narratives. It may lose some of its essence as it's losing its aura as it's taking place and reproduced. Right, and finally, it can build affect apart from traditional authorship. It's not just about the music, but it's how this is being communicated to us. Okay, now, this is and finally, music can move across platforms. If we're familiar with, as an elder millennial, I get most of my TikTok through Instagram, so we know Reels, but we know that this can move in between platforms. Okay, so this study here, particularly, I was looking at Aquatic Ambiance, Slow and Reverbed by Sizzy. Are we able to, will we be able to play some of that or not? Well, okay, we'll get there in a minute. I just wanted to, hopefully we're all gonna be able to hear that. One Reddit user described it sounds exactly what my early childhood felt. At the time of my study, it had been used more than 200,000 times on TikTok and 50,000 times on Instagram. This was just this one particular sound that I searched through, so there were probably copies that were wider ranging. This was in October of 2024. I pulled 100 videos that used this sound, and then I looked sort at them for nostalgic content. I came up with 76 videos to analyze and 4 that were sort of borderline. The rest were using the same sound in a different fashion. And then I took a cultural studies or a vibes-based method approach, which has been used to understand affect. Okay, and now hopefully, we can play the sound. If not, you're just gonna have to Google it on your own time. No sound. Okay, apologies. I have this all ready to go. The sound itself is a slowed and reverbed song that had initially been played in Donkey Kong Country. It has been picked up and again used throughout nostalgia content on TikTok. Okay. However, the content or the imagery to go with the sound has been what I'm gonna call mundane, all right? So here is a photo carousel that were snacks from your early childhood you can still taste. Maybe we know some of these, maybe we don't. Shark bites, anyone? No, some of us, okay. I remember those, they were delicious. Laffy Taffy, which I think is still around. Fruit roll-ups stackers. Dunkaroos, which I know, were they reintroduced in Canada as well? They were reintroduced in the States about a year ago, 2 years ago. So they came back, no worries. Oh, okay, let's try it. Okay, So we have a sense of what this sounds like. With the carousels, as the sound's playing, right, these are clicking through to show different items. And again, it has this very sort of low, relaxing feeling. In the best moments, right, when the melody changes, so do the photos, and it feels very sort of serendipitous, we'll say. Okay. And then comments, right? Addition to the Reddit user that I found, right, the comments on some of these are that this music do something to me. I did check these. This is how people wrote. I did not edit any of this, right? Or someone else writes that words can't even describe how emotional and nostalgic this sound is with these pictures. My God, I almost cried. It's wild. Okay. There we go. This sound, again, I'm showing you particular pictures here, but it was also used to overlay videos from McDonald's in 2002. Again, sort of underscoring the mundaneness of some of this. However, we have comments like this. Back when $5.42 got you 5 items on the dollar menu and a, quote, simpler time, the ice cream machines worked and they had apple pies and it was cheap and good. Some other here, a video, and again, you have to imagine these playing with the sound underneath it, but we have shopping at Walmart in 2024 versus 2026. Life was so easy, cry face. Also very similar, Target between 2024 and 2005, all the color is just gone. We also have something like this, which is AI generated content, but welcome to 2002. Right? A new house is $183,000. A family household income is $42,000. A new Toyota Camry is $19,000. And people are saying in the comments, I should have bought a house instead of worry about my 5th birthday shakes my head. And this was also liked by 38,000 users, which I think is pretty significant for an AI generated TikTok carousel. Alternatively, there is this fight between a couple users where one insists that these prices still seem expensive. Somebody else says that inflation, people don't understand inflation. And as we're going back and forth, ultimately we understand that somebody is seeing the minimum wage at $5, and $5 was a lot more valuable in 2002. I'm not an economist. I can't do the math. So I will let you all to your own devices on that. One other last thing here is another AI generated content. This is POV from 1997. You wake up at a sleepover. If you look really closely, it's hard to see here, but the television is both a flat screen, but also a curved tube. Just more general AI. But this wonderful stove with multiple burners, which I found particularly interesting. And so what? Why am I talking about this? Why did I make everybody go through all of this? We're going to be well under that. Thank you. For all of this sound, right? But this is part of a larger project where I'm examining affect via social media. Although I am really interested in why nostalgia is resonating now, right? What about it? Certainly, I'm coming at this from a US perspective, and we are living through some unprecedented times. However, I do think that this is an overarching question here. Right? I do believe, and you heard a little bit about it, that aquatic ambience encourages this nostalgia, right? It makes us feel a particular way, as some of the comments said. Hopefully we got that sense. If not, I will encourage you to look it up. I feel it, I will say. Obviously, that's how I got on this topic. But it's also not the only one. We can go on TikTok, we can go on Reels and find multiple other examples that are used very similarly, often a little bit sort of lo-fi, if you will, but we have this sort of moody music that gets played out. One thing that I did point out here is that most of the visuals are consumption-based, and I think that speaks somewhat to our cultural touch points. Who hasn't been to a Walmart or a McDonald's, even if we're not necessarily nostalgic for it? I don't really need to go back to McDonald's in 2002. I don't know about the rest of you. Also, though, these references create in-groups and out-groups, right? For those of us who are old enough to have lived through 2002, we have a particular vantage point. For those of us who haven't, or we're very young and don't remember, there's going to be a different relationship to this content. Again, in-group and out-group. However, I think what's most interesting here is that I'm interested in if this sound, right, or these types of sounds allow for mis or disinformation. Again, how are we figuring out what the past was like, right? What are we remembering? Who knows what those numbers were like, right? I checked some of them, but I don't know where they came from. And how many other people are actually going to check these prices and be like, oh, yeah, actually, those prices are wrong, or people made more or less, or how exactly do we weigh it? So those are the questions I'm dealing with. I'm still working on this project, obviously, and hopefully maybe we'll have some questions or some thoughts, but, oh, final, does this matter? And I'm gonna say that it does because politics, but here we are. All right, so thank you.
Thank you. One of the pros of being both a panelist and an organizer is that I got to read your proposals ahead of time, and so I've also been very excited for yours. Something that I unfortunately take quite a lot of time doing is scrolling mindlessly through TikTok, and so I was well familiar with the sound, and so I really like your interpretation. I would like to invite both of you guys back up for our Q&A session. The microphone is over there, and then I will pass the mic to whoever gets the question asked to. So what are people's initial thoughts? Do you have any questions for us? I personally have a lot of questions about Poptropica, but I will leave the floor open.
If you're here in the space, just raise your hand. Those of you online, feel free to raise a virtual hand, or you can pop your question into the chat and we'll read it out loud. I think I may have saw a hand down here. Okay, I'll hand you this mic.
Oh, I get a microphone too. Wow. Usually I'm plenty loud, but this one's for our friend from SMU. I've noticed there's a lot of reminiscence in terms of like video games for specifically the Wii era. And I noticed like a lot of the like TikToks that use the Aquatic Ambiance sound also use like music from like that. But they also use like music from the Wii Maker, from Wii U, and they use like a lot of like general stuff from that. So I'm wondering if you're noticing a increase in like the design sphere of throwback stuff in that regards to like the reusing typographies, styles, high gloss, natural shape, etc.
It's a really great question. I will say that I'm not a huge designer, so some of this might be missing me. But I do think, to your point about Wii, right, and playing that, so much of this nostalgia does play into a childhood, right? The sort of playfulness, I think, in some ways, which I think might be relevant there. I don't know if that really answers your question. Again, but I think that that's what's sort of, to some extent, going on.
Okay.
Any other questions in the audience? Oh, I see one over here. Yeah.
Hi, thank you. Hello. Okay, so yeah, my question is for Myles. I'm an MA student here at Concordia, researching affect and trying to develop a theory of affect of my own. And so my question for you is, you say you have like a vibe-based methodology for your research. I'm wondering if you got any kind of pushback from that, like what kinds of conversations revolved around that, just because studying affect and like emotional exchanges is so subjective. So I was curious to know what your experience was like with that and what your process was for developing like the vibe-based kind of radar.
Yeah, that's a great question. What I will say is that this is the first time I'm presenting on using vibe-based methodology. I can share the article that I took it from with you. I consider myself a cultural anthropologist and an ethnographer for the most part, so I don't really care about methodology, which is not the right answer I'm aware of, but so far, because this is the first question I'm getting on that. But yeah, I think it's interesting, and we can talk more probably offline.
I think we have time for one more question. Do we have anything in the audience? Yes, I see one right here.
I have a follow-up question on the vibes-based approach, though I loved all of your presentations quite a lot. So specifically when researching social media, how do you kind of reconcile like selection or confirmation bias when collecting your data with these trends, and like how do you approach that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this was a very purposeful base sample, right? I mean, I used TikTok to find the track and then searched via that. And I have as a qualitative researcher, obviously I'm not a big data person, but so I have a Excel spreadsheet with all of the links in there that I was consulting as I was trying to figure out, what's here. I mean, and I think that's a great question. And certainly I will say that some of this is biased, right? I mean, I'm very clearly advocating a point, and I think I'm not somebody who personally would advocate that we need value neutral research, right? I think the best you can do when you're doing cultural studies type work is to share as much as you can, and hopefully it resonates with people. That's part of the reason why I tried to embed the sound and make sure you all could hear it. So there is some personal relationship to that.
All right, thank you so much. This was a very insightful panel, and it was wonderful to be paired with you guys. So thank you, Thomas, and thank you, Myles. Round of applause, which I guess includes myself. And I'm going to throw it back to Richy, who is going to introduce our next segment.
Hi! Me again. Wow! How was that? One more round of applause. That was awesome, actually. Very nostalgic. My goodness. Well done, Zo. Oh, okay.
Second fist bump of the day.
I know. I'm not counting here. Folks, I encourage you, now that we sort of reach the tip, right? The point of, we've been talking about nostalgia in 4 different elusive terms, right? Toys and cultural products that sort of trouble what we mean by comfort, perhaps, in the timeline of that, and the access that Thomas was talking about. We also have the baggage of home, Kenza, right? And Muna, I was talking about that as well. And Alice. And we also have nostalgias within the shadows, right? The sixth sense, right? The elusive forms of nostalgia that come and go around us, close and far. We also have the research creation. And this year we are particularly lucky to end all of this into sort of a nice salad bowl, so to speak, of what our artist, Nyambura Orungi, calls a balance between ritual, performance, and scholarly transmission. So during this final break that we take today, I do encourage you to stay. Grab yourself some leftover pizzas, some drinks, and then when I come back on the microphone, please go over there and grab the cup of tea. There are teas there, right? So don't grab the teas now. Just listen when I call again. All right? Anyway, right now, just enjoy the break, and we'll be right back for the final performance. Thank you so much.